Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a fabulous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. When I say we are commanded to love each other, I'm talking about love of humanity. Love of humanity and respect for everybody else's humanity. It shouldn't be complicated, but apparently it is. No, you're not supposed to love Satan. So for those who have a hard time with it, let's keep it simple. Just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think that'll cover all of the bases. This young lady's name is Tyler something or other. She's a South African singer, and she has a hit record now called Water. She identifies as a colored South African. Now in Black America, we don't identify as colored, but that's how she identifies. And apparently that's an ethnic group or some kind of ethnic designation in South Africa. This young lady on the screen is named Simone Umba. She is a Congolese immigrant living in America. And she made a TikTok video in which she was making fun of the South African singer or laughing at her because she was calling herself colored or something like that. So there was some kind of a kerfuffle on TikTok about Black Americans. South Africans and maybe even others all over social media talking about those Black Americans and calling Black Americans names and ignorant and any other kind of derogatory term they can come up with. So all of this heat and inflammatory language is coming toward Black Americans because we don't want to accept that that's what they have in South Africa. And so it has just gotten to be a big thing. And so now I'm going to say right off the bat that this is much ado about nothing, because as a Black American myself, I don't give a damn what South Africans call themselves, and I think most African Americans feel like I do. But Africans apparently like to pick at each other. And so this is an African woman. When I saw her, I was thinking, she didn't quite look like an African American to me. But, you know, she could, because we have different looks too. But anyway, it's gotten to be a thing on social media because she had something to say about this young woman calling herself colored. So this African American guy, thinking that this was an African American woman, I guess, came on and said this.
Peace. Meet Tyler. How do I know that her name is Tyler? Because
hey, it's Tyler.
That's how she self-identifies. Among many other wonderful things, Tyler is a South African colored woman. Not black, not biracial, colored. That's colored in South Africa and colored here in the United States, despite the fact that many Black Americans don't want to call Tyler colored because of our own negative association with the term colored during segregation. But you see, South Africa had their own segregation called apartheid. Apartheid was a white supremacist power structure. And in the context of white hegemony, there are certain social privileges that come along with proximity to whiteness. While colored South Africans are generationally mixed, one can be colored in South Africa without being the child of an interracial couple. So you see, if Tyler were to kowtow to the sensibilities of Black Americans and refer to herself around the world as a Black woman, she would run the risk of offending Black South Africans who know and have experienced the difference between being Black and colored in South Africa. Remember that race itself is a social construct, and there are many societies around the world. Are Dominicans Black? Are Panamanians Black? Are Indigenous Australians Black? Are Somalians Black? Or Egyptians? Eritreans? Seychellois Black? These are all questions that are often debated, but the answer all depends on which colonial context you subscribe to. Because ironically, you know who's not Black? Black people, because it was Dwight Mann who invented race in the first place and quite literally branded us these labels. Relax and remember, we all we got. We out ya.
So that gives some context to it. In South Africa, being colored gives you more privileges apparently than being Black. In the United States, we didn't experience it that way. If you had one drop of African blood, you were colored, you were black, or whatever the name was that we were being called. So we don't embrace the term colored. We didn't like to be called colored, but they do. And based on what this man is saying, the real South Africans get upset if the colored call themselves black because a racial distinction has been made between them. And that's another difference between them and black Americans, because the way the black Americans would look at it, we would say the coloreds are trying to distance themselves from the black South Africans as if they think they're better. But see, our interpretation of it would be wrong based on what this man just said. So since we don't have all of the information, the best thing to do is to stay out of it. Leave it alone. If that's what they want to be called, if that's how they've got their society set up, then respect that. Now, I'm going to say something that might sound a little controversial, but I don't think black Americans owe anybody consideration when it comes to that. Black Americans aren't trying to tell them what to call her in South Africa. Black Americans are saying, we don't use that term. And she's coming to the United States. She's been flouncing around here in the United States. I saw her on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon. And so she's over here. Now, black Americans are not required to change anything because of her. But out of respect, you would just say she's a South African or call her colored. Call her what she wants to be called. And I think this needs to be said, but this is one of the reasons why black Americans are starting to have problems with African immigrants, because everything becomes a big deal. We have our way of doing things in the United States, and they have their way of doing things in their countries. And when we go to their countries, we should respect how they do things. And when they come here, they should respect how we do things. Calling somebody colored in the United States is very offensive. So that's going to be difficult for a black American. But I don't think it's an unreasonable request for her to say, in South Africa, I identify as colored. Now, I don't think that's asking too much. And then black Americans can make the adjustment. We actually are flexible people. We've had to be flexible. But the reason someone asked me to speak on it is because with no more information than this Congolese woman coming on social media laughing at her for calling herself colored, they jumped all over black Americans making insulting and derogatory remarks about this woman that nobody had even heard of before last week. We don't call people colored in the United States. Now, if that's hard for you to understand, that's hard for you to understand. Black Americans are not required to call you colored if they find it offensive in the United States. Black Americans are at home, so nobody was sending for her. And if she wants to come over here, she needs to understand that it's difficult for a black American to call somebody colored. Now, what she could do is have a discussion and explain it just like the black man did. It might still be hard for a black American, but at least you would understand. But nobody is required to change anything about themselves in their own homeland because you decide to come. And as far as the Congolese woman is concerned, at least she knows enough about black American culture to know that we don't like to be called colored. Because when that whole people of color thing came up, black Americans were offended and made a definitive statement. We are not people of color. We are black. In the United States, people of color are Asians and Hispanics and Indians, everybody that's not white except black people. And whether it's a racial construct or not, that's what we're living with right now. So the Congolese woman, she could have not laughed, but she could have explained the situation as it is, because she's not wrong. And at least she knows that much about black American culture to know nobody wants to be called colored. Now, it is much ado about nothing. And as far as the South Africans getting their drawers all twisted up, they need to understand that this is our culture and this is our country, and she was coming to our country. So they have just as much responsibility to respect our culture as we have to respect theirs. We have our own issues in the United States. What you call yourself in South Africa is of absolutely no importance to Black Americans. It didn't become a problem until she brought her ass over here. We didn't send for her and we didn't go looking for her. But if we say we don't want to call anybody colored, we don't want to call anybody colored. And if that gets to be such a big problem with you, then maybe stay your ass in Africa. Because at the end of the day, nobody cares what she calls herself in South Africa. But the reason I'm taking the position that I'm taking is because there are people in this so-called African diaspora who don't seem to realize that America is our home. Our culture, our history, everybody that we love and care about is here in the United States of America. What I see is this little, whatever she calls herself, the South African, coming over here, copying the style of Beyonce and Janet Jackson and any number of other Black Americans, giving Black Americans back their own music, but failing to recognize that terminology in America is just as important as it is in South Africa. America is home to Black and white Americans. And some of these folk need to stay at home until they realize that when they go into another country, they need to respect the cultures of that country, just like they want people to respect the cultures of their country. Mutual respect is the key to understanding. There's nothing wrong with a South African saying, I identify as colored. There's also nothing wrong with a Black American saying, we don't identify as colored in the United States because of its historical implication. And that should be understood too. I don't see anything complicated about either one of them. This never came up until this woman decided to come to the United States. So I don't know. I just have a problem with this whole thing about trying to make a diaspora war out of everything. We have too many problems in the United States for anybody to be wasting time with the diaspora war. So maybe people need to stay at home until you learn that you respect people in their homeland, period. Okay, y'all, let me know what you think about the video. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.